Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Welcome to an all-new episode of The Payoff. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. This one hits home for us because we both own motorcycles.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we don't. This
definitely
is like the worst. I get the argument for doing these shows, okay? You tie in with an event. It's something unique. This was just oil and water, man. Not a good mix. I mean, it doesn't look that great on TV. They don't know what the hell's going on. You don't make any money on the gate because, you know, you're having it at a free event. Maybe you do a nitro at this thing, but man, I just hated this concept. Like, we have it on screen at the mark we're going to start, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, how is this a good idea? And you did it like 3 times. It's not like this is a one-time thing. So we're not covering this because it's a 5-star classic. We're covering it because it was just a shit show in so many different ways. What do you have to say for yourself? You're the one that
this is we've got some notes here too on like how much money they predictably lost, doing this, and like, maybe if you had some bigger stars on this one, I say bigger stars, like you get Hogan and DDP, but also like some actual people that could wrestle. We'll talk about, why Jay Leno is in there and stuff like that, and just the whole idea of why they did this and things like that. And so, why we're covering this, because it is such just a weird kind of thing. Like, it's fun to explore like these kind of unusual circumstances that like a match like this takes place, kind of like we did the collision or the, North Korea stuff. And there's a little bit of backstory to some of these, but even like you said, this is not a 5-star match. There, even the backstory here, there's not, like, it's just weird. And so we're going to cover it and see what happens here. But yeah, it's just weird going into this. I'm just going to say weird is the best way to describe this one.
Yeah. It's funny. You'll talk about this, but like, there wasn't much of a build to this thing. Like, it all happened like within a few weeks. That's what I couldn't believe. Like, I mean, literally like 9 or 10 days before this thing, they shot like the big Tonight Show angle. I'm thinking that happened months before the match. So yeah, I completely agree. So anyways, we'll cover it all, man. But let's jump right into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So this is Road Wild. We started as Hog Wild, but there was some issue with Harley Davidson and Hogs and trademarks. So this is called Road Wild. It's August 8th, 1998. We're in Sturgis, South Dakota. So this is like a small town that has this massive biker fest every single year. And it sounds absolutely wild. But they estimated about 8,500 are in attendance for this thing. We had Heenan Tanay and Shivani on the call. Got Okerlund there. We got the whole gang. I mean, it's, the talent was on the show. I mean, they put their best foot forward, but man, between the booking of this thing and just the crowd atmosphere, it was a disaster. Meltzer's poll, 67% thumbs down, 17% thumbs up, 15% thumbs in the middle. Meltzer said horrible matches, mind-boggling booking, horrible crowd reactions. Tough to argue any of that. Best match on the show, Jericho and Juventud. Worst match, Steve McMichael and Bryan Adams. Again, there's just talent all over this place, but started off with Meng and the Barbarian in 4 minutes. And Jeff, keep in mind, we forget because we watch wrestling all the time, but if you put someone that doesn't know what the hell's going on in front of this stuff, what's their attention span? Like you're sitting there, you're physically sitting on your bike. You probably have your, 78th beer of the day in your hand. You've been out there drinking in the summer heat all day. And it's like, we're going to put this stuff in front of you where you don't know either of these people. I mean, some of them, sure, probably like grew up fans. But I remember, hearing something about these shows and they're like, yeah, no one really knew who anyone except Hulk Hogan was. So, again, you're watching Megan the Barbarian in like 4 minutes, man. That probably felt like a long time. Then Public Enemy defeating the Dancing Fools of Disco Inferno and Alex Wright. That's 15 minutes. So think about that. Like entrances are probably 6 or 7 minutes between the two teams.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking like the better part of a half hour for this, right? Like what could they possibly do that was that interesting?
And that was one of the longer matches on the card too, which is just crazy. Yeah.
Saturn defeating Canyon and Raven in a Ravens Rules match. Mysterio Jr. defeating Psychosis to determine the number one contender for the Cruiserweight Championship. Stevie Ray was your television champ. He defeated Chavo Guerrero Jr. 2 minutes. Steve McMichael defeating Brian Adams in 6 minutes. Juventud Guerrero defeating Chris Jericho to win the Cruiserweight title in 16 minutes. So 2 Cruiserweight matches on this show, which is kind of interesting.
And a title change. Yeah.
Yeah. The semi-main event was a NWO Invitational Battle Royal that Goldberg would win. All right. So you had Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Conan, Kurt Hennig, Sting, Scott Norton, Lex Luger, the Giant, all in this thing.
Sure.
So, I mean, there are like a lot of talent, but like in some 7-minute battle royal. And then this main event, DDP and Jay Leno against Hogan and Bischoff. Whew. I mean, we'll get more into it.
It's really mind-boggling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I got more to say, but we'll talk about it during. So I know there wasn't much to this, but how did we get to this match?
Yeah, it was actually there's not a ton. And so Bischoff kind of said on his podcast, he said that really Leno came to him and said that he wanted to do this. I saw some other stuff out there that said they went back and forth. Like there was, but it was just weird no matter what. And Leno saying, said, would you wrestle? He goes, yeah, I'll wrestle. And so they had a little bit of back and forth and, just kind of figure out what it was. And so, and it was, you had Hogan and Bischoff kind of taking over the Tonight Show for a week. So for our younger listeners, he kind of hosting the Tonight Show at the time. And so, kind of having him take over. You have also like Jay Leno was involved in this. You might hear Kevin Eubanks was his band leader. And so you might, they kind of just play in the angle of what if they took over the show. And so, and at the time, Jay was extremely popular, and kind of how they could make it work. And it was just a whole really weird thing. And so you had DDP showing up on the show as well, too. And then being challenged literally on Leno's show for this. I don't know if that's really it. Like they just kind of showed up. It was a thing. I do wonder, and we can talk about it a little bit more during the match, like maybe trying to capture some of the previous years Road Wild where you had the Rodman Malone stuff. It's just, and maybe we can talk about too, maybe would this card have worked if it wasn't this show? I guess I
just don't know what you could put in front of this crowd to where they would have enjoyed it. You don't know who the guys are. You don't know the storylines. You're not fans of the product. And wrestling relies on it. You could put a dead crowd at a football game and still have a great game, right? But this stuff relies on the crowd, and they just didn't give a shit.
And so, it's just weird. And so we'll kind of get into it. I've got some questions during this one, but let's kind of put this one on. Like I said, there's very little build up to this one. It did not make a ton of sense, other than you've got Hogan and Bischoff, because of course the Hollywood NWO, and then you've got DDP and Leno, just tag team, and like you said, in front of just this kind of an odd crowd. So
we'll track the audio too, so you can hear some of the just the way it came across. But we're literally looking at I mean, I can see like food tents in the back, and I see, people on their, I guess they were sitting down, but then you hear like the motorcycles. So anyways, we're season 2, episode 1 of this, but it's WCW Road Wild 1998, 2 hour, 25-minute mark. That's the 2 hour, 25-minute mark. Jeff, are you ready for this?
As much as I can. I think we've only turned off one match in the history of this, and so I don't know if this is going to be another one, but we're going to get into it. So I'm as ready as I can be. Let's do this.
All right, it's time for the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
Show about his past. Doesn't need to though.
Leno in a blue t-shirt
on the outside.
Yeah, DDP starting.
He points at Hollywood Hogan, and here we go. Or do it.
Bischoff with the t-shirt tucked in.
I see Virgil down there as well too.
Yeah, I think Melissa Elizabeth is ringside as well.
Hogan and Page will begin things.
I mean, it's not like, listen how quiet it is. This is your main event.
Sounds like kids in the audience.
We're all sitting down.
They are on bikes.
Diamond Steel with a smiley.
Yeah, I thought they sat on there, but not all of them maybe. But like, I remember the one year, I think the first year they did this, they were like,
Hogan pushed him back to the corner.
Yeah, Kevin Eubanks at ringside.
Okay, a little DDP chant.
So
I mean, the problem is like, you bring in Rodman, you bring in Mr. T, hell, you bring in Zeus. I mean, you bring in people that are athletic, okay, or at least look athletic. This one, even at the time, and by the way, I'm a huge Leno fan. Like, I like Leno. I'm like more Leno. I was always Leno versus Letterman and Leno versus Hogan. I just like Leno a lot. And I feel like most people our age don't. It's like Leno's more of like an old people.
I don't like him. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I get it, right? I don't know why. Just for whatever reason, I always liked Leno a lot. Anyways, but I remember seeing this and I'm like, this is stupid. The guy's not an athlete. And then, it's like Bischoff. I mean, at least Bischoff's young. Like Leno's like, I don't know what he was at the time, 55 years old, certainly not athletic. Like, it's just stupid. Like, it's just like, it's so fake and so dumb. And, even if he was just in the corner instead of in the actual match, like, I could have gotten a little bit more behind it. But I thought at the time it was stupid. I think it's even stupider now, but just my opinion. What about you?
So he's 72 now. So, that would put him at 48 in this one. So, yeah.
He just looks older than 48.
Yep. So that's Kevin Eubanks too, who again, the band leader, kind of taking some shots at Hogan, whatever.
We talk about the involvement of the system. 1, 2, almost got a 2 count. Somehow I can't.
Almost got it.
So the crowd on this one too, the numbers I saw on this one, it said that, and this was kind of Meltzer's write-up. It said, in front of a free, I'll come back to this, a free, largely biker crowd estimated to those live anywhere between 8,500 and 12,000. Of course, exaggerated on year by Bobby Heenan as 35,000 to 40,000. For a hot promotion, which WCW still is, you are talking about giving away anywhere from 200,000 to 350,000 gate, plus another $100,000 or more in merchandise. And so they did sell about $30,000, just shy of that, worth of merchandise at this event. And so, I'll say that, like, I'll start with, okay, this was free to the people that were in the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. And if you're not familiar with it, I have friends that have gone to it, and literally people drive cross country on their motorcycles, their Harleys, and go to this little town in South Dakota of Sturgis. And pretty much it gets taken over by the, motorcycles and bikes and stuff like that. It's about an hour away from Mount Rushmore. My buddy and I actually went to Mount Rushmore. It was like the weekend before. And so we're passing like all these motorcycles and stuff. We didn't realize at the time how close we were to Sturgis. And so we got out of there before it was the thing. You got Bischoff now doing like Shane McMahon kicks.
Look at the balance that Bischoff lasers gets in with, guys.
So I guess there was a pop for DDP. Did they stack the deck against themselves with this? They gave it away for free. Like this weird Jay Leno who just got the tag. Like, it was that would this have done better on like a monthly pay-per-view, maybe like trying to, maybe doing a little bit more, like what could have fixed
this?
It
was a terrible idea. Keep in mind that like at this point, like, you're doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars for an average gate, right? So even say, you could have sold a couple $100,000 worth of tickets. The pay-per-view didn't do well.
Yeah.
Because I think people thought the concept was stupid. So they knew they weren't going to get like a great wrestling show anyways. So it was just a bad idea all around. I mean, they lost a lot of money because of that. But I mean, you figure you could have, put 10, 15,000 people in an arena and had a far better show, and it could have had any theme you want.
I'm looking here. It still was not the worst buy rate. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at here, trying to. But I'll try and get some info.
Keep in mind too how hot wrestling was in '98. Okay, so like by any number, they were doing, and I say they as in both companies were doing double what they were doing the year before. Mm-hmm. So in '97, WWE's average gate was 80,000, and in '98 it was 160,000. WCW's 70,000 up to 150,000. So even in '97, when NWO was going, Austin was starting to catch fire a little bit, Attitude Era, like '97, good year for the business. '98 doubled it for both companies. So in the midst of this, you're doubling. At some point you're going to have Jay Leno for this show. Why not sell out the Staples Center? You do it in LA. Maybe you bring in some other celebrities.
At the time, he would have been, Leno was filming in California, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because Letterman was New York. And so, yeah. It's just weird. So this was listed about 2 years old. This was WCW's 10 highest grossing pay-per-views by buy rate. This show came in at number 9. And
that's how hot the business was.
Yeah, like, and it speaks more to that.
Yep. People were just buying everything in '98.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I think it much more speaks to that. Now, here's the oddball. Like in retrospect, hindsight 2020 on this, we can see like this shouldn't have worked. But I guess when you start looking at it from the lens of like, okay, like even like the Logan Paul stuff, like you're bringing people in that are celebrities and hot at the time, like you're dead on. Like Leno was bringing, like this was, the big, we don't talk about it as much anymore, but like the talk show wars and stuff like that. It was Letterman versus Leno. So to bring in Leno is kind of a big deal. Now, you got Leno even doing like a weird kind of, some little moves, nothing crazy. He's not going off the top rope or anything here, but you figure Paige and everybody else is kind of carrying this one. But it is like, there's like an RV driving through the back right now. I don't know if you just saw that. That was weird as hell. Like kind of doing these things. Yeah, Leno not looking good on that one, but getting the pin on Hogan, which would be hilarious. It does make sense when you look through the lens of 1998 and what the landscape was like. Yeah.
I mean, the business was just so hot at this point. Like I understand like in, 94 doing a free show on the beach or something. But at this point, God, the amount of money that you could make, it still baffles me. Like, I don't think it's said enough or it's necessarily understood how bad WCW just screwed up. I mean, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue in 1998, and you're out of business less than 3 years from this point. Mm-hmm. How is that possible? Yep. Yeah, it's possible if you're in an industry that dies or you have technology that's irrelevant, or there's massive fraud like an Enron. I mean, I get it, right? Like businesses fail, but for you to be, at this point in 1998, you could value WCW at well over $1 billion. Okay. The argument could be made that WCW is a $1 billion brand. If in September of 1998, they wanted to sell it, you look at like what UFC went for, $1 billions and billions of dollars. You look at what WWE's valued at as a publicly traded company, billions and billions of dollars. At this point in 1998, WCW, again, you can easily say they're $1 billion brand. So how do you, in 3 years, run $1 billion brand completely into the ground? And the guy that's laying in all these bad-looking punches right now, Eric Bischoff, I think he's a hell of a nice guy. I believe that he was not qualified and able to handle the job that he had.
Eventually, correct.
And
yes.
He blames Time Warner and, there's standards and practices and, I had all these issues. And, if you booked good storylines, you would still be in business to this day. Like that's the issue, is like booking like this bullshit. Like this is okay. So he hits him with Knox.
1, 2. Nate's got away.
DDP kicks out. Wasn't sure if that was going to be the end, but you get what I'm saying. Is like, how do you ran $1 billion company into the ground, and you can say, it was Time Warner, it was WCW, it was that, it wasn't me. I'm sorry, but like if you weren't booking Jay Leno and you were booking Hulk Hogan versus a young up-and-comer, and you put the young and up-and-comer over, and you create some new stars, and those new stars sell, millions of T-shirts like Steve Austin, why is WWE still in business? Because Vince McMahon's a lot better at what he does than Eric Bischoff was. He made Steve Austin. He made The Rock. He made Mankind. He made all these stars, whereas WCW, they didn't make new stars. They caught lightning in a bottle with one storyline that they really didn't have that creative a run with. I mean, the NWO got pretty lame pretty quickly, in reality. So it's just, it's amazing to see if they could have kept it, what would it be? I mean, what would it be worth to this day? There's no reason why WCW and WWF couldn't coexist. I mean, look, I don't think Tony Khan's perfect, but he's building $1 billion brand, and they're probably going to get a massive new TV deal. All they're doing is what could have been WCW. Hell, it could have been ECW.
Well, and I'm looking at this too and I said the year before, it was actually the pay-per-view before this was the Bash on the Beach, which was the Hulk Hogan, Rodman, DDP, Malone fight. Looking at this same list. So while this show, Road Wild, Hog Wild, was number 8 on the list of highest grossing pay-per-views, the Bash at the Beach was the pay-per-view, like just barely a month before this one, was number 2. It was the second highest grossing pay-per-view ever. So when you start looking at it through that lens, and like you figure it from a financial and a business perspective, like, why wouldn't you try and replicate some of this with these guys? Got Leno and Bischoff in the ring now. A real standoff of the Titans here.
Leno went to the hair.
There's a little bit of noise, but everyone's just sitting flat on their asses.
Yeah. And so from a business perspective, like, okay, we're trying to catch lightning in a bottle again, like you said, like with this pay-per-view, because it was so successful. There's a low blow from Leno. It was so successful, like the pay-per-view previous to this one. And so while watching this in like a vacuum is super weird. And Jay Leno throwing just a stiff shot onto Eric Bischoff there, like really got all of it. Here we go again with this. Just a hell of a right-handed punch there. Boy, these two guys.
The other thing too is this wasn't Leno's crowd. Like I don't know who the celebrity would be, but I'm sure there are some celebrities you could have put in front of this crowd that they would have gone nuts for, right?
Well, and everything I read,
like a country music singer or something. I don't know.
And everything I read, it was Leno because he has a motorcycle. Like he is a car buff. Is
but he's a car guy. Like I didn't even know he owned motorcycles.
Right. Yeah. And so if you didn't know that, but still you're having Jay Leno be your biggest draw on your card. Like when you've got Hogan and DDP, like that doesn't make sense.
And you had Sting and Goldberg and Nash and Hall. Oh, okay. Hogan accidentally punched Bischoff.
And we're not that far removed. Like 2 pay-per-views ago, I'm kind of going through a list right here. Just Evan Eubanks, the band leader. It was Sting and the Giant was Great American Bash. So like that was your pay-per-view too. Weird. What kind of pin is that? He had him. Sure. Okay. Kind of put him in a headlock, had his shoulders up, but still pinned him. Sure, I guess.
How about the quickness of Jay Leno? How about the teamwork?
Quickness of Jay Leno. Okay, Tony, calm down. Like,
God, that's terrible music.
Yeah, it's just weird.
All right, let's get into the aftermath.
Oh, it's time for the aftermath.
All right, initial thoughts.
Whatever there is of the aftermath. Yeah, I don't like. It was whatever. It wasn't good. I'm not going to try and lie. Yeah,
it wasn't good and it wasn't terrible. You know what? One of my big critiques is that this wasn't a main event. Like, if this was in the middle of the show, it's like, oh, that was kind of fun, right? But like, This was your main event.
Yeah, that piece, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, and so now you've got NWO kind of doing a beat down to Leno and a couple others. Like, yeah, they're just kind of out there. We're about to get a run in a second here. Yeah. So
Goldberg.
And here comes Goldberg.
So Goldberg had just won the championship.
Yep. So coming out here, Goldberg trying to make the save. Double spear Hogan to Bischoff. Yep. It's kind of cool with motorcycles, but has nothing to do. Or like you can hear him kind of revving and stuff. It has nothing to do with anything else. But yeah.
Okay, see this is even dumber to me now because Goldberg had just won the title over Hogan. A couple weeks before this or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So why wasn't Goldberg your main event?
Yeah.
Have him beat Kevin Nash or Scott Hall or I don't know. I mean, right? Like. Why not? And then they did that stupid NWO Battle Royal. So you didn't even have. So think about this. Like, if you're trying to pop a buy rate, you've got your brand new champion who's hot as hell, and you're not even putting him in a match. Why not put him against a heel that he can beat the shit out of? That should have been your main event. Like, think about this. Like, and again, how hard is this, right? So, and maybe you end with this. Maybe you end with Leno, but why not have? Hey, we're going to do, and I know Goldberg beat Scott Hall earlier in the night, but Scott Hall, Goldberg, and Scott Hall comes out and he says, I've never seen so much trash in my life. This place smells, right? Like, so even if you don't know the guy, you're booing the hell out of him.
Cut the heel promo.
Yep. Then Goldberg beats him in a couple minutes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
But this is where it's like, Bischoff can blame standards and practices and WCW and Time Warner all he wants, but this is horrible. Like how you were still making hundreds of millions of dollars in 98 booking this shit is beyond me. It was terrible. Just shows you how hot the business was. Like, this isn't good, man. Like, every single thing that WWE and AEW is doing like this year is way better than this. Yet this product was hot as hell.
I think it speaks a little bit to just the success of wrestling in general when you've got people like Logan Paul and even Bad Bunny who whatever, but I get why there's a crowd that he appeals to. This is them trying to capture that, but it just wasn't there yet. And so when you get this now, celebrities have always been a part of WrestleMania too, but it's just kind of this wasn't necessarily the right way to take this, but so aftermath, what there was here, this was, and I had forgotten about this. You had Hogan announcing his retirement actually on Jay Leno's show. There was a press conference as well too. It was a work to get into a publicity stunt to hype at the time who Jesse Ventura running for Minnesota a governor. And trying to get people it was really weird. I kind of went back and did some research on it. There's no other way to cut it. It was just weird. So, but you eventually had, and Hogan took some time off after this a little bit too. Eventually came back in early January, as we all know. This was the finger poke of doom. Yeah, and so
again, how bad was this?
Yeah, and it's almost like this was kind of the start, like this summer of '98. Really, it started to fall apart. And so, on the flip side, where you had all this kind of weird stuff with Hogan, DDP, he did eventually have a title shot He won actually War Games, which was the following pay-per-view, which we're going to cover that one in a little bit. That was also just oh boy, that was a negative 4-star match, and we've got it on our list to cover.
Which
eventually
one was?
here. The War Games from 1998, which was Team WCW versus the Team NWOs, and so just absolutely terrible. But
War. I'm thinking World War III. Oh
no, the War Games, yeah. And so, but DDP and Goldberg
Warrior was in that one, I think.
Yes, yeah, it was really weird, kind of swinging through the cage. Yeah, so they actually did have the match of the year, which was WCW's match of the year in 1998. That was Goldberg and DDP. He ended up actually having winning the United States Championship over Bret Hart. They were worldwide year like World War III. DDP winning that one. Like I said, just it was weird. It really was, and so
you're being kind by calling it weird. It was fucking terrible.
Bad. So getting into the reviews on this one, DDP, like obviously Leno and Bischoff weren't ever ranked for PWI. DDP was 4, Hogan was 53 this year. So the PW Torch on this one, they gave it 2.5 stars. Sure enough, Goldberg came out and went nuts, spearing both Bischoff and Hogan. He then held Leno in Page's arm. It was smart for WCW to get Goldberg out there to share in some of the celebrity hysteria. Leno also needed someone to hold him up because he was ready to collapse. Hard to rate the match, but it was really good for what it was. Okay. Leno was far from a star athlete, but that almost added to the charm of the match. Rather than have outside athletes come in and try to be real wrestlers, Leno didn't give any pretense for being an actual wrestler or athlete. Instead, he found a good balance between doing comedy, but not belittling the match or the wrestlers. Well booked. 2.5 stars. Meltzer, on the other hand, Jay Leno wrestled, sort of. Well, he was in a wrestling match and grabbed one hold and threw 2 punches and did a double team clothesline and scored the pin over Eric Bischoff at the end to apparently prove that he was really the king of late night television. He was terrible athletically, but was kept well hidden and he didn't embarrass himself. Hulk Hogan and DDP once again worked with non-wrestlers. This time the two men hardly qualify, or this time 2 men who hardly qualify as world-class athletes, but it still blew away their match last month, probably because they knew to keep things shorter and simpler, which the match previously, that was almost a 25-minute match with Malone and Rodman, which, yeah, no thanks. The match had good heat, nothing special, and unlike last month, the audience didn't sleep through the match. Leno got a good reaction, but not anywhere close to what you'd expect. Yeah, I'm not even gonna finish reading. 1.25 stars. So 1.25, and what did I say? 2.5, which, oh boy, if you come close to that, I'm gonna be shocked here, buddy. So what are you thinking here? I'm feeling it's gonna be pretty low. I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, I mean, I'm giving this a payoff score of a 2 out of 10.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, because it's like, it just makes it so stupid and fake when you put an unathletic 48-year-old in there. Like, it's, again, the jackass Johnny Knoxville stuff. He took bumps. It was fun. Like Logan Paul, he wrestles. Shaquille O'Neal in AEW, really good. Like, again, I have no problem with crossover people. Bad Bunny, but like, dude, you got to do the part in your own way and, or have some legitimacy. So I hated that. I hated the atmosphere. The storyline made no sense. The booking was terrible. Like, everything about this just sucked. I mean, I actually thought the match would be even worse than it was. That was the only thing. I'm like, well, it was an okay 12-minute match. It wasn't terrible, but I hated this. I mean, this is one of the worst things that we watched. It's almost as bad, but not quite as bad as the Goldberg Kevin Nash match. But it sucked, man. What do you think?
Yeah, you were generous, my friend. I'm giving it a 1.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I actually thought 2, but I just like it did absolutely nothing for me. And I say the only reason, and I even we've never given a 0, I don't think, on the show, but
no, we have
at least that I remember. I would say the only reason I even gave it a point was because, like we kind of explained on the show, like if you start looking at it through the lens of what WCW was doing at this point in 1998, it actually does make sense. Like why they booked this the way they did with Jay Leno. It's just a quick build. It didn't need much. Like maybe we'll get a cheap pop, like whatever. But in the grand scheme of wrestling, and like I said, they kind of we're leading to the end of WCW here, like not good at all. So yeah. You know what is good though, Tom? I feel like, if you're going to have, something you're not going to get a low score on is Dues and Manscaped products. Make sure to go to their website, pay off 20 for 20% off, free shipping, everything in the store. You only get 15 if you don't use our code. So you get that extra 5%, 20% off total. That won't leave you disappointed. You're not going to leave the ladies disappointed. You're not going to leave the dudes disappointed. Like you're going to look great. You're going to feel great. Unlike this match, I'm not feeling great after this one. It's not looking great. Hopefully next week we can pick it back up a little bit.
Man.
Sure. Yeah.
There's times where we'll watch a 40-minute match and it'll fly. That hurt though. That felt painful.
Yeah. Well, we did it. I'm glad we did it. And we'll never talk about it again.
Ever. So, I don't ever want to talk about that match again. And you're welcome for keeping this short and sweet. Yep. We appreciate you listening. We'll see you next week on an all new episode of The Payoff.